Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening for another webinar from Hult International Business School. We today are going to be discussing how you can fund your graduate degree. And we're going to be speaking specifically about our one-year global MBA in addition to our master's degree programs. So my name is Darren Lockery, and I am an Associate Director of Enrollment here on our Boston campus for the MBA program. And we have a number of people on this call, several of whom have already submitted applications. Some of you have already maybe confirmed your attendance for this fall. But if anyone is new and joining us for the first time, welcome. If you are interested in applying after the webinar, please feel free to start an application on our website, www.hult.edu, and we'll have an enrollment director reach out to you promptly. All of our candidates here at Hult do work with an enrollment director. So we will allow for some time for Q&A after the webinar. And to get started, I would like to introduce my colleague, Karen Van Dyne.
Hello.
Hi, Karen. Thanks so much for joining us. Karen is the Director of Financial Aid at Hult, and she has 15 years of experience working with candidates from around the globe. She actually specializes in federal and private loan options, so she is our in-house expert and will be your contact for all loan matters. So I do have her details here for any further communication, but just note that this webinar, a recorded copy, will be available afterwards. So we'll be able to send all this information through our website later on. Today, we're going to look at a couple of different things when it comes to funding your loan. First, the investment in your education. So, of course, the decision to go back to school is a big one. So we're going to talk a little about that decision. Also, federal loans for U.S. citizens and permanent residents, private loans for our international candidates, further options specifically for Canadian candidates, and then merit-based scholarship in addition to needs-based grants, which are both through Hult. And finally, at the end, we will allow time for some Q&A. So first, to speak a little about investing in your education. As you all know, the decision to go back to school at any point in your career, whether it's upon recent graduation of an undergraduate program or further down the line with several years of your career under your belt, it is a big decision, and it is going to take both time and money. But one thing to rest assured with is that Hult is actually ranked number 2 by The Economist for return on investment. So what this means is that in an average of about 2.1 years for all of our graduates, you are able to recoup that investment in only 2.1 years, which is a really great payback period. And I have a nice chart, which I'll show you next. This is factoring in the opportunity cost of going to a one-year program. You're back in the workforce and earning a degree much faster than you would be in a 2-year program. And also it factors in the average starting salary for Hult graduates, with the MBA average starting salary at $91,900 US and the master's at $55,500 US. So here's a chart just outlining that payback period. As you can see here, Hult is actually ranked number 2 with an average time of 2.1 years to recoup that investment. Great, so I would love to pass over the floor to Karen now to go over federal loans for U.S. citizens and permanent residents.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for taking the time to speak with us today. I'm going to talk to you about the application process for receiving loans from the U.S. government. If some of you have already started this process, some of you have already been awarded funding, so for you, this is old hat. For the rest of you, I'm going to go through the process, and please do feel free to contact me at a later date if you'd like to, and I can explain further what the eligibility requirements. So if you are studying in the Boston or San Francisco campus as your home campus, you are eligible to receive federal funds if you are a U.S. citizen, a permanent resident, or if you are an eligible non-citizen, such as an asylee or refugee. All U.S. grad students, regardless of need, are eligible for a federal direct loan of $20,500. That loan will be disbursed to the school in 3 payments in September, in January, and in May. So with the federal loans, they are dispersed throughout the school year, and the interest that will accrue on that loan will accrue throughout the school year. Now, currently, the federal interest rate for the direct loan is 5.84%, but that's subject to change on July 1. To get this loan, you start the application process at FAFSA.ed.gov. I'm going to take a second here and caution you to make sure that you are not going to a site that doesn't have a .gov at the end of it. There are other sites where you will pay money to get your FAFSA sent to us. There is no reason to do that. The FAFSA stands for the Free Application for Federal Student Aid. It is pretty easy to do. It is as long as you've done your taxes for 2015, you actually can just upload a copy of your taxes directly into the FAFSA. And if you have any questions, you can call them, or you can call me, and I'm probably faster at getting back to you than they are. Now, $20,500 is the amount of funding that you can get from the federal loan. That is a standard loan. That is a entitlement loan. So most U.S. citizens and permanent residents are going to be eligible for that, as long as you're not currently in default of a prior student loan. If you need more funding and you meet these qualifications, you can apply for a federal plus loan. Now, a plus loan is a credit-based loan. So if you want the federal plus loan, you will have to pass a credit check. The good news about the plus loan is that it's not looking at what your credit score. It's looking for negative hits against your credit. So unless you are currently you have a bankruptcy, a foreclosure, or charge-offs on your account, you should be eligible to receive a plus loan. If you are not, what they're looking for is any debt that is more than 90 days past due. That doesn't include medical debt. Medical debt would not be part of this. So if you have very little credit or you have no credit, you could still potentially get a plus loan. Now, if you do have some hits on your credit and you're not able to get the plus loan by yourself, you can have an endorser, which is basically a co-signer, and that person can co-sign your loan for you. Now, of course, they are definitely then responsible for your loan if you don't pay on that debt, but that is what a co-signer does. You can borrow up to the remaining costs of tuition and some reasonable living expenses based on the campus that you're attending. You can do this at studentloans.gov. Once you've completed this, you've confirmed your seat, I will send you a financial aid award with some estimated start dates. And at that point, you can do your promissory note. You can contact me with any further questions you have about this particular loan process. Okay. Great. Looks like I did all of this already. Sorry. So the payment on the plus loan is deferred until after you graduate. On all of your loans are deferred until after you graduate, which means that you don't need to make payments while you're in school. However, you can if you want to. And in fact, I would recommend, if you're able to make a payment while you're in school, you should make at least small payments to start an account with the Department of Education, also to get in the habit of doing so. Our school code is 041432. You'll notice that we are listed in Massachusetts, which might be a little confusing if you're going to San Francisco, but Massachusetts is considered the flagship campus. So all of our loans flow through here because I sit here. I don't want to move to San Francisco. So we're going to be listed as Massachusetts. And the loans are dispersed once school starts. So what that means is that if you're borrowing a loan to cover some of your living expenses, you'll get that dispersed to you in 3 payments in September, in January, and in May. So you'll get the money throughout the school year when you need it at times that you'll know about as soon as you apply for the loan. Okay, so private loans are also an option for U.S. citizens. Some people will choose to get a private loan over a federal loan, or they'll choose to get a federal direct loan, that $20,000 I talked about earlier, and then get a private loan instead of getting a plus loan. Or if you're going to a campus outside of the U.S., such as London or Dubai, Or if you are not a U.S. citizen or permanent resident, but you have a cosigner who is a U.S. citizen or a permanent resident, you might get a private loan from the U.S. government. Quite a different number of reasons why you would be choosing one of these private loans. Now, I will certify a loan from any lender. The ones we work with the most are listed up here: Sallie Mae, Citizens Bank, Discover, and Wells Fargo. We do have many students who are eligible for loans from a smaller credit union, or if their students are military members or former military members, they're eligible for loans from USAA or Navy Federal, and sometimes those loans have a better interest rate than the standard private loans from the larger banks. If you are an international student, so if you are not a U.S. citizen, but you have a cosigner, again, this is somebody who will take responsibility for your loan, who is a U.S. citizen, you can get one of these loans. If you are planning on getting a private loan and you are maybe in the master's program, so you're younger, you don't have a ton of work experience, and you don't have a very long credit history, I would recommend starting with a cosigner if you can, because that's going to make your interest rate lower. Okay, where the federal loan is a fixed interest rate, 5.84 for the direct loan and 6.84 for the plus loan, private loans are going to vary based on your credit and the credit of your cosigner. The loan can cover all of tuition, the loan can cover your living expenses, and they're dispersed at the beginning of the year, so you get the entire amount of your credit for your living expenses for the whole year, and you need to budget that appropriately. With most of these loans, with all the ones I've mentioned, there are different options for repaying the loan. You can pay while you're attending school. What you would do is you would make payments on your interest. You can defer the entire amount until after you graduate from school. And with all US-based education loans, you do get a 6-month grace period before any payments are required. But your third option, which is an option that I like the most, is you can make a payment of $25 a month while you're in school. This will give you a slightly lower interest rate. It will also allow you to have a relationship with the bank that you borrowed money from, and it will make sure it lessens the chances that you'll miss a payment once you do actually graduate. Okay, so if you're not a U.S. citizen, or if you don't have a U.S. citizen as a cosigner, there are still a few options. Some of our students use banks from their home country. So, I don't know if we have any students who are looking at potentially an ISATEC or a Kona Seat loan. We do work with those organizations. And Darren's going to talk a little bit more about the GoEd program.
Excellent. So GoEd is a private lender which we work with primarily for our MBA. So for any MBA candidates that are interested in the GoEd loan, I would recommend you contact your enrollment director to find out if you're eligible. It does require an application process, as all loans would, but you would need a cosigner. This cosigner isn't necessarily from the United States. Different countries are accepted, and your interest rate will vary from 5 to 8%.
Okay, so I'm going to talk to you a little bit about an organization we work with called Empower. Now, for now, this loan is only for the Boston campus. So those of you who are going to one of the other campuses wouldn't be eligible for this loan at this time. This is a loan for students who are not U.S. citizens, who do not have credit in the U.S., and who may not have a cosigner. So this is a loan based on your potential to repay the funding once you've graduated. The interest rates are slightly higher. They're 8 to 14%, and there's a 5% origination fee. However, to my knowledge, this is the only loan that an international student can borrow while in the U.S., and they do not need a cosigner or any collateral. Their funding model is based on the concept of micro-lending, right? So, the maximum amount they'll lend you is $25,000, which isn't a microloan, but most students borrow far less than that. The concept of the Empower loan is to help an international student get the last little bit of tuition or living expenses they need to be able to make their educational plan happen. So we see a lot of students who get this loan throughout the year when they find, for instance, if there's a currency devaluation and the funds that they were counting on to pay their rent, or they're not able to do that, or they want to use our rotation program, but they find that they're not able to pay for the additional costs, such as travel and housing, for the rotation program. If you're using an Empower loan to get your I-20, you will obviously need to have additional funds because the loan won't cover all of the cost of tuition and fees for the I-20. But this can be a piece of your entire financial picture. And again, we're pretty excited about this because we see a lot of students who otherwise wouldn't be able to attend the school who are able to make this happen with a little bit of help from this organization. Okay, so I don't know if we have any Canadians there, but we do have quite a few Canadians at Hult, and I'm actually the person who processes all of these too. So we'll certify a private loan from any bank of your choice. And the way that it works in Canada is that a private bank in Canada gives the money directly to the student, and then the student turns around and pays their tuition with it. So if the loan won't disperse until after you start classes, but your tuition is due before, I can actually put this loan into a pending status as long as I have approval, as long as I have documentation from you that the loan is fully processed. We do have students who receive institutional funding from Canada, from the government, from the Canadian government itself, if you haven't used all your funds for undergrad. Also from many different provinces. The OSAP loan, the Ontario Student Assistance Program, is one of the most common loans that we see. It does cover a small portion. It goes directly to the student, and I think it's about a maximum of $11,000 of tuition, and I believe that there's a small stipend for books as well. If you are Canadian and you're from Ontario, you know more about this than I do, because all I do is certify it. So what I do is you send the document to me stating that you will be a student or you are a student, and then in the middle of the year I certify that you are still a student and that you are still in good standing, which hopefully you will all be.
Great. So I would like to go over some of the merit-based scholarships that we offer for our MBA students and for any of our master's students. So scholarships at Hult will be awarded and may be awarded to candidates as long as their profile match our requirements and we still have the funds available. So these scholarships are awarded based on an applicant's experience and their overall profile. And as such, your scholarship will be awarded after you have already applied to the program and if you have received a positive admissions decision, then it's at that time that our financial aid committee would also be able to make you a financial aid offer, including scholarships and/or grants, which we'll get to next. So with any program, competition increases as the year progresses. So it's always recommended to apply as early as possible. Hult does award scholarship again after you have completed the entire application process, as that is when we will have the best idea of how much you will be receiving. In order to apply, it's actually a very straightforward process. All that you need to do is submit a 300-word essay for the scholarship of your choice. And we have our scholarships outlined on our website. Also, your enrollment director is a great point of contact for this whole process, as he or she will be able to speak a little bit more to your candidacy and eligibility for each of these. We have the Academic Excellence Scholarship, which, depending on your program, is based on either your GMAT score or GRE score and/or your GPA from your undergraduate program. We also have the Global Professional Scholarship, which is for candidates that have worked in either an international company or an international setting or on an international team. Also, the Social Impact Scholarship for any of our candidates that have done some work in a nonprofit or even intensive volunteer work, working for any organization which is doing something to impact the greater good. The Entrepreneurial Impact Scholarship for our candidates that are budding entrepreneurs and have some experience launching their own ventures. Also, the Senior Leaders for candidates that have many more years of professional work experience and have reached higher levels of management within a company, and the Women in Business, and finally, Future Leader Scholarship. So there are various ones available. As with any scholarship application, I would encourage you to focus your efforts on one or two that you think are really best suited for your profile. It's impossible that all of these would be a good fit. So focusing your efforts and your time on one or two that would be really in line with your profile is the best way to go. In addition, we also have needs-based grants. And a question that I get a lot from candidates is, Are grants also awarded to candidates outside of the United States? And at Hult, they are. We don't differentiate between domestic students and from the United States and students from other countries, as we are such a global program. So when it comes to awarding grants, these are needs-based, and we award them to candidates that qualify. We have a financial aid form, which will be completed with the application. And with this information, our financial aid committee can make an offer. Hult awards grants similar to scholarship after the entire application process has been completed. And they're, again, for any eligible candidates, regardless of nationality. Excellent. So I'd like to pass it over to Karen again for some helpful tips. She's been working with candidates for several years, so has a good bag of tricks.
Hi, guys. So those of you who are here are probably in some way or another concerned about your finances. So I wanted to take a minute to talk to you about budgeting while you're here. So all of our campuses are in exciting and very interesting locations. And that's great because there's a lot of internship opportunities. There's a lot of people that you'll meet from inside and outside the school. And there's a lot of social and cultural experiences that you can have regardless of what campus you choose. However, we don't have any campuses in any low-cost areas. So if you are concerned about finances and if you're thinking about getting a loan, especially, which you'll have to pay back, I do want you to think very seriously about the costs that you can control. While tuition and fees go directly to us, to Hult, your living expenses are something you'll have to pay each month. There might be a few of you who are considering living in the residences in London. I don't, and that's different, obviously, but the vast majority of you are going to be paying rent to a local landlord. And housing is going to be probably your biggest expense while you're here. Although if you're from a sunny clime and you decide to come to Boston, you'd better buy a coat. So roommates are key to all of these locations. And what you'll find is that, especially in the cities that we operate in, there are a lot of opportunities to have roommates. I live in Boston. I've lived in Boston my whole life. And I can tell you that very, very few people who are, in their 20s and 30s live in the city and live without a roommate. Even fewer people who are actually students and who aren't working. So I would tell you to find a roommate, find a couple of roommates, go on the Facebook pages of the accepted students and find some people you click with. Also get to know your neighborhoods and the transportation options. All of our campuses have public transportation around them. None of our campuses have parking. It's not a great idea to bring your car to any of these cities, especially if it's a different country. And public transportation is great, but what you want to figure out is, where is the school located? What are the public transportation options around me? And what is my reasonable commute? And where can I live on that area? Start your search early. In Boston, especially, is again what I know. In Boston, people are looking for roommates to start September 1. September 1 is the biggest turnaround time for landlords and for rental properties in the city. So if you start looking for like a room shared situation, if that's what you've decided you want to do, you can do that, and you can find something. If you start early, you can find something reasonable. And I will tell you that I work with students who are here. Darren works well with students before they get here. I work with students when they're here, and the cost of their rent and the cost of housing is sometimes a big stress for students. And I want you to think about that ahead of time and think about how you're going to be able to get rid of that particular stress. We want you to be stressed about your homework, not about your living expenses. Also factor in your costs for your start date. So, your moving costs, your security deposit, things that you might have to ship, et cetera, et cetera. Obviously, some of you are coming from further away than others. And if you're moving overseas, you're going to need to think about even stuff like how much it's going to cost in baggage fees to move all of your stuff to where you're going. So these are all things that at this point you really should be thinking about when you're thinking about your total budget. So that's I just want to be able to take a couple of minutes to talk about that and give you guys, just put that little bug in your ear This has got a great program, but very, very few of you will have the time to be able to have a job while you're in school. And some of you, obviously, your visa restrictions will mean that you can't work while you're in school. So, you need to make sure you have a plan to cover your living expenses for the time you're here.
Excellent. So we would love to open it up to all of you to ask your questions. And we have a couple of questions that have already come in. For those of you that are wondering where you put those questions, you'll see that there is a questions box and you can just type in your question there, and Karen and I will be able to read them on our end and share our answers. So first one is from Miriam. What if you are a U.S. citizen applying to London as your home campus?
So in terms of loans, if you're a U.S. citizen applying to London, you can get a private loan. If you have a cosigner, again, I would recommend a cosigner if you have one. If your credit is good and you've been, you have a long credit history, you may not need one, but every little thing helps. That's going to be your best option for covering your funding while you're in London.
Great. And our next question is, what do you mean by origination fee?
That's a great question. Origination fees are fees taken by the lending organization from the top of the loan. So most private loans have a 0 origination fee. The Empower loan has a 5% origination fee. The Plus loan has a 4.272 origination fee right now. That's going to change on July 1. I don't know what it is. The Direct loan has a 1.073% origination fee. So what that means is that so if you borrow $10,000, you only receive 96% of that $10,000. The rest of that goes into the Department of Education's coffers.
Excellent, great. And next up, when you were talking about the $11,000 approximately in OSAP funding, is that in USD or Canadian dollars?
That's a great question too. I think it's Canadian dollars actually, which I think it's Canadian from what I've heard.
And do you have any recommendations for shipping companies from Canada to the US?
I do not. That I don't know, but I think student services on the campus that you're attending will probably have that information. Also, I think Hult has some accommodation information.
And also, if that question is just referring to how can you get some of your larger belongings from your home to your campus, fortunately, you will be attending school in educational hubs. So there's a lot of students that come in and leave after 4 years or even after a year, depending on how long their program is, that are looking to sell furniture. So this is something that we do very often, especially in Boston. I know it's very common practice to get things off of Craigslist. We even have furniture rental companies available. So this would all, of course, take a little extra digging and searching, but I would encourage you not to plan to bring too many big things with you, as a lot of the stuff that you buy will most likely be in the city you're in.
I'm just going to pop in there. The furniture rental place in Boston is quite expensive. I don't know in other places. I know London has some furnished flats that you can rent. I think Dubai does as well. I know in Boston I found that it's really quite a pricey place. Honestly, IKEA is a better option.
Which is close to Boston, so. Mm-hmm. And how much does housing cost for the rotation process?
That's a good question. Depends how much you want to spend. Depends where you go, obviously. So Hult doesn't charge you additional tuition for rotation. That's already packed in. But you do have to get yourself to the city that you're going to, and you do have to live there. So what many students will do is they'll choose a lease that ends in June, so they can do their home campus, their first module up to module C, and then they will move to a different place. So it varies by campus, and it varies by if you're looking for 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, etc. One thing that is helpful is that because we have students moving all over the place, we do have a way to connect you with a student in the campus that you're going to who may need to get rid of their apartment, get rid of their lease. And that's something that we can talk about quite a bit at rotation. We do have housing available in, I think, the San Francisco and London locations for rotation because we have undergraduates in those campuses, and the undergraduates aren't there in the summer, or far fewer of them are there in the summer. So that is an option potentially. I don't have the prices for that for next year, obviously, but if you looked on Hult now, you could see the options for right now.
Exactly. So for those of you that have already applied and have been admitted into the program, My Hult is really an amazing resource with different for different information regarding housing and many things the academic year to come. But I would always encourage you to look at those resources. Again, that's My Hult. And next up, if I'm in the USA as an asylee, can I apply for FAFSA and a PLUS loan?
Yes. So yes, if your asylum status has been approved by the Department of Homeland Security, in that case, for federal aid purposes, you are considered the same as a U.S. citizen. If you want to talk to me directly offline about this, I can absolutely help you. In some cases, we do have to run your status by the Department of Homeland Security, but that's fine. And your second question is, what is the last day to apply for FAFSA? Well, June 31st, 2017. You can get your federal funding at any point during the program. So if you're becoming if your asylee status gets approved during the program, or if you become a permanent resident during the program, or if you just run out of money and you want to get your loan later in the year, you can do so.
And next up, what is the average amount of loans needed specifically for living expenses?
Depends on the campus, and on our website we do have a budget in local currency for each campus, and that's a modest budget that we're expecting, especially if you're borrowing loans, that you are living with a roommate. But I think that, so I don't want to go through every single program, every single campus, but I think that you can look on our website and you can find that, or you can contact me directly and I can tell you what is the maximum amount that I'll let you borrow.
Great. And next up is, what GMAT scores would make you eligible to be considered for the Academic Excellence Scholarship? That's an excellent question. For the MBA, it is around 700 and above. And for the master's programs, I am not quite sure. I do know that the Master of Finance is the only master's program that does actually ask for that GMAT score. The other master's programs do not require it, as they look at GPA. So again, for anyone in the master's, I would recommend asking your director of enrollment for those specifics regarding the academic excellence. But for the MBA, it's around 700 or above.
Can I borrow the PLUS loan to cover part of the living expenses? Yes. So the PLUS loan and a private loan you can use to cover tuition and your living expenses. Okay.
And how does Hult provide any guidance with accommodation in San Francisco? This is very similar. We do have, as Karen mentioned, we do have undergraduate housing in San Francisco, and during the summertime, a lot of those undergrad students clear out, so that allows for housing during the rotation period. But beyond that, we also have a student services team. I know San Francisco especially is one of those locations where students seem to have a lot of fears regarding finding an apartment, just given how volatile the housing market can be there. But rest assured, all of our graduates have found housing for the duration of the program. Again, we connect students with one another via Facebook prior to enrollment in September. So that's a great way to start exchanging ideas, get a feel for who's looking for roommates, what type of neighborhoods are they looking at. And My Hult, again, has a lot of different resources.
How much do you recommend saving for additional expenses? So I've been working in finances for 15 years, so I recommend saving a lot. But I think that your best bet is to make a realistic budget. And I think what you need to do is look at transportation, public transportation, in a couple of cabs a month, certainly. Look at your rent, look at your utilities. If you're moving to Boston, what is your, is your heat included in that? If you're moving to Dubai, is your air conditioning included in that? Food, do a conservative estimate of what your grocery bill, what you're eating out, etc. bill will be, and do that monthly, and then do that for 12 years. I'm sorry, 12 months, not 12 years. Do that for the full 12-month program. So a lot of it depends on what your personal situation is, and also, of course, what campus you're going to.
Excellent. And next up, is there a deadline to pay the tuition fee?
Yes. So There are two basic programs. If you're not getting a loan, so a loan will cover the tuition or a portion of the tuition, or if you're getting a tuition, if you're getting a loan and it's not covering all of your tuition, there are two basic ways to pay your tuition. One is in three distinct ways. You pay 30, 60, and 90 days before classes begin, and that's our standard payment plan. The other plan is you can go on the installment plan. The installment plan is a plan where you pay half of your tuition before classes begin and the other half in December. There are additional fees to that, though, and I don't know. Do you know what the additional fees are for this year? No, I don't know what those are yet. When the bills come out in May, you will be able to talk more about what that particular fee is, but there is an option to hold part of your tuition off until December.
Great. And next, do you recommend the Duel Masters program? It's really up to the individual. Again, that Duel Masters is allowing you to complete either your MBA or your Master of International Business in the regular 12 months, and then an additional 6-month degree in the Master of Finance or Master of International Marketing. From just the perspective of the type of investment you're making, it's a $27,000 value for that program. So certainly it is a lot to think about, but if you are interested in going beyond the specialization and actually having expertise in one particular area, be it finance or marketing, it certainly is a great option and up to the individual.
Okay, so this is a specific question that I'll send you an email about this specific question. So there's a question that just says, what about the MBA students? I don't think I understand that. If you want to clarify that, please do, and we'll get back to that one.
And your group of accepted candidates on Facebook, one of the questions is, how do I join that group on Facebook? This is something that our student services will do a couple months prior to enrollment. So we will let you know as soon as that Facebook group is up and running to start connecting our incoming students by campus.
Yeah, just for clarification, students are notified after acceptance to Hult whether or not they qualify for merit or need-based. So yes, so when you're going through the application process, that's when you would potentially do your scholarship essay, if you choose to do so. And then when you're accepted with a scholarship essay, with a potential scholarship and financial aid. So obviously we don't give you a scholarship before we know if we're going to admit you to the school. So you get your acceptance and your scholarship and financial aid at that time. And that's when you apply for your loans. After that, you apply for the loans once you know what your grant and scholarship package is going to be.
And for those of us who are interested in the dual degree and therefore will be in school for an extra 6 months, the cost will obviously increase in terms of cost of living. Will that be taken into account when applying for student loans?
So yes and no. So you apply for student loans on each year. So if you were an undergrad, you would apply for student loans 4 times, right, for each year. So if you choose to do the dual degree program and you have higher expenses, you would reapply for loans for the second year. At this time, we're working on getting federal funding available just for your living expenses for that dual degree program, that portion. But you wouldn't be able to borrow funding for your living expenses for 18 months up front. You would borrow it for the first year, and then when you decided, yes, I'm going to do the dual degree program, then you would start the process in the summer for the second year. The visa documents, I'm not super clear on the visa document process, so I would refer you back to the visa team in your home campus, and they will be able to help you with that. I don't want to give you wrong information.
Great. So yeah, if you have, for any of you who have confirmed your attendance to Hult, your visa coordinator, if you do require a visa, depending on campus choice and citizenship, then your visa coordinator should be reaching out to you. We did start that process in April. So this will be your point of contact for all visa matters. And next, if I am a U.S. citizen doing a dual MBA or MPhil program with a home campus in London, is it possible to apply for federal loans and also private loans?
So you can't get federal loans with home campus London. I think your question is, if you come and do the MFin in Boston, can you get federal loans then? And I don't have the answer for that yet. There's a brand new program, and the Department of Education works very slowly. So I don't know if you can do that yet. You can get private loans for both programs, though.
Excellent. And just to reiterate, the federal loans, those FAFSA loans for our U.S. citizens and permanent residents, are only for Boston and London.
Boston and San Francisco.
Boston and San Francisco, my apologies. And you need to start in either of those locations, Boston or San Francisco, and spend at least the first 8 months of the program there. So how much of the tuition, if you opt to do the 2-payment installment rather than 3 installments, how much of the tuition can you hold off until December?
So you can choose to break your tuition into half. Half of it goes before classes begin, half of it goes in December. However, if you are an international student coming to the U.S. or a U.S. student going to Dubai or London, you do have to show funding to get your student visa. So you have to have the funding available in some way in order to get your visa to get to the program.
And next up, we mentioned that 2.2 years return on investment for what kind of role was this statistic taken from? So that it's actually 2.1 years for your return on investment for the MBA at Hult. And that is factoring in all of our candidates that within the first 3 months of graduation have found employment, which is 88% of our graduates for the MBA. So it's really factoring in various types of job positions. We do have a recent career stats brochure for our graduating class of 2015 for both the MBA and for our master's programs. And if you haven't received that yet, I would encourage you to reach out to your enrollment director, as this sheds a little more light on what type of positions Hult graduates are taking after they finish their degree. Next, do you have to pay back FAFSA for any federal loan?
Yes. So FAFSA or federal loans. That is as a graduate student, you're not eligible for grants from the federal government. So these are all loans. They do have to be paid back.
And to clarify, GoEd is for MBA students. That is correct. And what is the deadline for fall entry for merit-based scholarships like the Global Professional, Future Leader? We actually do have a scholarship deadline coming up this Sunday. So if you haven't applied already, I would encourage you to do so, to send that scholarship essay in. We will continue to, this is most likely going to be one of the last, if not the last scholarship deadline. So typically each admission cycle by this time in the year, by April or May, scholarships start to taper off and are no longer awarded after that point. But again, reach out to your enrollment director. And which months are MBA students allowed to go for internships? The internship is not built into the curriculum. It is optional, but a lot of our students during the last 4 months of the program do like to have internships at that time, which are for credit. And you cannot receive a salary for this. They would be part-time, about 20 hours a week, but a lot of our students do like to try and have that internship experience. So this is something that our career services and our corporate relations teams will be able to help you with upon enrollment. So for the GRE, I see how about a GRE score for admission. We actually don't have a minimum score requirement. We really do have varied scores. And the reason being at Hult, we place the most emphasis on, for the MBA students, your professional background. So coming in with at least 3 years of full-time work experience. And we like to see what kind of work you've been doing, any growth within your job or potential for growth and leadership. And then for the master's students, how well they did in their undergraduate program. So factoring in that GPA as well. So there's no minimum GRE score requirement. It does vary student to student, and we do have a range. But the average for the MBA for a GMAT equivalent is about a 610. Are international students qualified for loans?
Well, that depends. Some are. If you are an international student who has a co-signer who is a U.S. citizen or permanent resident, yes, you can get a loan. If you are an MBA student, you may be eligible for a GoEd loan. Or if you are an international student and you're coming to Boston, you may be eligible for an Empower loan.
The next question is the timing of the scholarship application. So if you've already been accepted into the program and we're hoping to apply for scholarship, when would that be due? That is something that your admissions coordinator will be able to speak with you about. We send everything off to the financial aid committee for review. So typically we ask candidates to apply for scholarship as they're completing their application, so that when we notify students with hopefully a positive admissions decision, at that time would also be able to award the amount of scholarship that they have been given. So always along with the application is preferable, but if it is something that you're doing retroactively, you would need to speak with your enrollment director. And these scholarships can all be found on our website, hult.edu. You'll see each program, our MBA, our Masters of Finance, Masters of International Marketing, and our Master of International Business all have different scholarships available. So take a look on our website and look through. There's about 6 or 7 depending on the program. And I would encourage you to speak with your director to see which would be a good fit for you.
How should we pack for the rotation program? Well, that depends where you're going. The rotation program is, you have a year before you determine what your rotation is going to be. And the student services team on your campus will definitely help you with that, with explaining more about what you'll need to take with you. You're going to pack differently if you're rotating to Boston than if you're rotating to Dubai. So there's lots of different things. I was told a FAFSA would be an option for me to use the London campus. So that's incorrect. We only have FAFSA funding in the US campuses. Can you learn a language with this program? Probably. We don't have language classes, but you will be around people who speak many, many, many different languages. So if you're someone who picks up languages quickly, you certainly will, have the opportunity to practice that with your students, your cohorts.
And I do know a lot of students do like to create language study groups or even offer tutoring to one another, as it is a really unique opportunity to get to study around so many people with so many different languages spoken. But one thing to note, actually on our Shanghai campus for rotation and also the Dubai campus where you can spend the first 8 months or even the entire year or rotate at the end, both of those do offer language courses in either Arabic or in Mandarin, respectively. So that is something that you could look into. But that would be on top of your courses. Of course, all of the business curriculum is taught in English, but if you did want to take a little bit of extra time out of your day and study a language, that would certainly be encouraged.
I did not know that.
Yeah. Can you please expand on GoEd? So GoEd is, again, a private lender that we work with. The amount that students can be awarded for MBAs that are enrolling in the program, the amount that is awarded it really does vary from candidate to candidate, and it is something that is based on a total financial aid package awarded. So this is for students. If you have been awarded financial aid or scholarship, we would look at that amount when then determining how much GoEd you would be eligible for. But again, as of now, this is for our MBA candidates. What's the most common loan that international students take to cover tuition and or living expenses?
So our international students vary greatly. We have a lot of students from Europe who are taking European loans. We have students, I know that we have students from Korea who are using loans from that bank. Our Canadian students are international. They're using the OSAP a lot. Our students in Boston are using the Empower loan. But I think that it's really hard to say for, international students. I mean, that's 200 different nationalities. What is the most common? I'm happy to work with you to identify some opportunities for you. Would the housing for master's students be considered on campus or off campus? So it's off campus for everybody unless you are in the London residence. But for the purpose, I think someone is looking at the FAFSA and asking, what should I put here? You can put off campus because we don't offer actual housing residence in our Boston or San Francisco campus.
And just to reiterate, if you are a U.S. citizen coming to the London campus as your home campus, where you will be for at least the first 8 months of the program and are either in any of our masters or the MBA, you cannot use FAFSA. FAFSA is only available for students that are starting the first 8 months in San Francisco or in Boston, so only our U.S. campuses. Is there a limit to the merit scholarships? For instance, is it possible to get fully funded? We do not offer full scholarships, so the amount awarded really does vary. And of course, it varies depending on the time of year that you apply and how far along we are in that admissions process. And then again, your overall profile and merit application or scholarship application. So it does vary for students, but we do not offer full scholarship.
Do you have to pay back our financial aid that is listed in our award letter? It depends where it came from. If it came from me, then yes, that's a loan. There's a part that might have said scholarship. If it came from your admissions department and said, congratulations, this is a scholarship, financial aid, or a grant, you do not. It's most common, the American resident students. American resident students, you mean a permanent resident? That would be the federal loans. If you're talking about people who live in the U.S. but are not U.S. citizens, then most of those students, if you're not a U.S. citizen and you live in the U.S. and you don't have a cosigner, the Empower loan is the most common loan that I see international students taking. Okay. So more discussion about MBA loans for international students. So again, the U.S. education funding is mostly set up for people who are U.S. citizens or who are here for who are U.S. citizens or have a cosigner who is one. There are not a ton of opportunities for students who are not U.S. citizens to be able to come to the U.S. and get educational funding from a private organization. So Hult does offer quite a bit of scholarship and financial aid for our students. And we also offer funding, through these different lenders that I've identified earlier in the presentation. We do have some students who are, like I said, using loans from their home countries. But the larger banks in the U.S., Sallie Mae, Citizens Bank, they don't offer loans to non-U.S. citizens without a cosigner. The Empower loan is a good option. The GoEd loan is certainly a good option. Those are smaller loans. It's not going to cover the full amount of tuition. It's not going to cover a full amount of living expenses. But it is a piece of the financial puzzle when you're trying to come up with how you're going to make this whole program pay. Okay. Yes, so I took me a minute to understand this question. Do students get refund checks after adjustments of loans, given that students already paid deposits to confirm admission? Yes. So let's say you paid a deposit of $3,500 and then you get a loan that covers your tuition in full. You would receive a refund of $3,500. If you got a loan that covered your tuition and your living expenses, you would receive your living expenses plus whatever your tuition deposit was. So the deposit is just that. It's a deposit. It is non-refundable because it is, your intention to attend the program, and we do hold a seat for you once we have that deposit. But it does then go towards the cost of tuition. So if you're looking to borrow a loan to cover your tuition, you can factor that deposit in if you choose.
Excellent. Well, it looks like that was our last question. So thank you so much, Karen, for joining us. Thanks for sharing your wealth of knowledge regarding loans and all the nitty-gritty of getting your finances in order for the year ahead. And thank you, everyone, for joining us and tuning in. Again, we will have a recording of this webinar available. And if you have any questions that are more detailed, please feel free to reach out to Karen. We do have her contact details in the presentation. And also, please feel free to contact your enrollment director with any further questions. So thank you all and have a great evening.
Thanks, guys. Bye.